Hey everyone, welcome to a very special edition of #Malkin Live. I am joining you after the airing of my new Sovereign Nation show on Newsmax. And as you'll recall, last week, one of my very first and special guests was Steven Baca, a young man who was beaten by a mob exactly 2 months ago today. I didn't plan that. I didn't plan to have this special telethon on his behalf on this 2-month anniversary. It's not a happy anniversary for sure, but I think that everything that's happened in this country the last couple of months shows why his case is so important. I think it's emblematic of the fights that many ordinary citizens are going to have to undertake, legal battles to defend themselves, in many cases against George Soros subsidized district attorneys. And in Steven Baca's case, as you'll recall from our interviews and live streams with him, as well as a recent column that I wrote that you can find at michellemalkin.com, the district attorney that is carrying the case against Steven Baca is a man named Raul Torres in Bernalillo County, New Mexico, subsidized to the tune of some $100,000 from a Soros PAC solely funded by George Soros in New Mexico. And we see this model replicated all across the country. You've also seen that many ordinary Americans who've been defending themselves against whether it's Antifa or Black Lives Matter, especially in the last 70, 75 days since the George Floyd incidents lit this country on fire, are also being targeted in a similar manner. You've got that couple in St. Louis, for example, the McCloskeys, who were defending their home from a mob that invaded their neighborhood, targeted by a Soros DA, a circuit attorney, they call it, but the same type of thing. And at the same time, in places like Portland and Seattle, you've got prosecutors who are doing the bidding of the mob and, in fact, defending them, refusing to press charges against violent criminal looters and other rioters who are responsible for assaulting ordinary citizens. So it's going to take those of us in the grassroots movement to do the job that so many have failed to do, and that is to help raise money, help raise awareness of cases like Steven's. And last week, of course, this didn't make the national news. You didn't see it in the New York Times. You didn't see it on CNN. You didn't even see it on Fox News. But if you've been tuned in to my Newsmax show and Twitter and Facebook, you've been following his case. And last week there was new news because there was a preliminary hearing that took place for the last couple of days in the last week. So I am going to bring in right now, let's see, let's make this better. Hey, Steven Baca and Diego Esquivel, who is one of the lead attorneys for Steven Baca. Hi, guys.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, it's great to see you. Steven, yeah, I reminded you before we got on that this is the 2-month anniversary. We talked a little bit about it on the Newsmax show last week. What are your reflections on everything that you've gone through? And especially knowing now, too, and I think we alluded to this is far from over.
Yeah, it's very far from over. The reflections, it's not a happy anniversary. I wish it didn't happen and I could forget it, but that's not. I don't have that luxury, so it's kind of go day by day and kind of forget about it, but you kind of have to keep your eye on things going forward.
Yeah. So, Diego, tell us more about the preliminary hearing process, and and if you can just sort of break it down into the basics too, because a lot of people know about what happened. They saw all the videos on June 15th, and then Steven had initially been charged with felony weapons charges. Those were dropped, then reintroduced, and then bring us up to speed up until just yesterday.
Well, the process in New Mexico, in order for a felony to go forward in the court system, is that there needs to be a probable cause finding by a judge. In this case, the probable cause hearing, the preliminary hearing, was set for Wednesday. We arrived Wednesday at 9 o'clock, ready to go, and the judge proceeded to be angry because the prosecution had not put together a witness list or an exhibit list. We had no idea which way they were going, how many witnesses they were going to have, kind of par for how they're handling this case. So the judge said, okay, look, we're gonna continue until Thursday, and we're gonna come back Thursday morning and we're gonna start. Started up on Thursday morning, went all day Thursday and half day yesterday. Yeah. So all by Zoom. Having practiced law for quite a while now, I can tell you it is extremely difficult to practice law via Zoom. When you're playing videos and over Zoom meetings, they don't have as slick a setup as you do. So it's the videos are choppy. It's almost like still pictures, movement. So you don't get the same feel for it. We had to stop several times because people's internet connections went down. So it took probably 4 hours more than it needed to. It was enlightening to see how they presented the case. Generally speaking, prosecutors don't have to show a lot to get the probable cause determination by the judge. This time, with this case, obviously we were putting extra effort into making them prove this. A lot of times you're going to just you're just going to go through the motions to go to the next one. I think that's how a lot of people look at it. They don't have to provide a lot, but this case is very nuanced and there's a lot there. Prosecution showed maybe 8 minutes of video and 80 photos, and that was all the evidence that they were trying to use to get this case moving forward. The judge made it well known that they had a lot of credibility issues. She was not impressed with their presentation of the facts. And the reason why is that there's a lot of hide the ball in this case. When you break any part of that night into a 30-second video or use the correct angle, then you get to make it whatever you want, which is not the truth.
Right.
And that's what they did. And that's how they tried to present it.
Right. So speaking of video, I'm going to have to refresh a lot of viewers' memories. This went super viral. And of course, Steven, you were not aware of this. You were not connected. I mean, you were in jail for a week. And in the meantime, especially that evening of June 15th, a lot of people, of course, had their phones. This had been planned by the mobsters, from my understanding and my reporting on this. They knew they were going to tear down the statue, and city officials had been put on notice. That night, I think it was close to 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I broke in live on my live stream. People can see it on the archive on YouTube, and interviewed a woman who was there, Esther, what's her last name? Esther Rivera, right? Esther Rivera, who had been there. And one of the videos that went viral was by an organization called ABQ Raw. I'm going to just play a little bit of that for people. I think you'll be able to see it as well. Just to remind people. Here we go. See if I can get the video. So, Steven, that's you there on the left-hand side, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Back up! Everyone back up!
That's Esther Rivera.
Get back!
And I'm going to stop it right there. Actually, let me back it up a little bit because I want people to remember that woman in the street.
Get back! Get back! Get back!
Right there, the woman with the bag, which had hard objects in it, correct?
Yes, I would assume so, because
How it felt.
yeah, that's how it felt.
Yes, she hit you with that bag, and let's see, what should we call her? I mean, I guess I'll call her bag lady for now. And then, of course, the video clips that went viral, of course, after you had been assaulted by many people, including a man with a longboard, one of those big long skateboards that led to you to having to defend yourself. Can you pick it up from there, Diego? Because as you were saying, there had been a lot of snap judgments about what exactly happened. And of course, one of those snap judgments was to have brought those charges that were brought against Steven before there had been any investigation at all, correct?
Yeah, we spoke, I believe it was the Friday after it happened, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that point, my message was like to wait and see. Let's start getting the information out there. Let's start having people look at things before anybody assumes. It's people were calling him a supremacist. That seems to have been subsided. Now they're just accusing him of going after women, or I don't know. It's something new this week because it's been clear that the Civil Guard the Civil Guard isn't a white supremacist group, but it's clear that there's no connection with Steven with them.
Right.
But as we're starting to see, as much as people want to say that it was a peaceful protest, by the time that they went after him, after Steven, and shortly before that, it was no longer a peaceful protest. Anytime you're going to do criminal damage to property, at his detention hearing, the state kept referring to it as a peaceful protest, and the judge, I think his quote was, "You keep saying peaceful protest, but did I see a pickaxe there?"
Yeah.
and obviously that got big laughs from probably one side of the room, but
Wow.
it just there's a concerted effort to make it something that it's not.
Yes. Well, that's extraordinary. Was there local media covering the hearings?
From what I would assume, from what I saw, because I had to do it from jail, because it shows on Zoom who was there or what people are watching. And I did see a few local media outlets. So I'm assuming, I don't know what happened, how they covered it outside of it.
I'm not aware that quote has been picked up by any local media outlet.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that was me.
That should be headline news. That should lead the 5 and 6 and 10 o'clock news on the local news, given the, all of the false narratives that have been told about this case from 2 months ago. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. It's not going to be at the times.
Let me give you another example. So we did, a day and a half of Thursday was from 8 till 4 or 4:40 was basically the state's presentation. In that time, they put on four witnesses, and they put on their exhibits, and not all 4 of their witnesses were civilian witnesses, and I'm trying to avoid using names of these people because they were saying, oh, well, we're worried about safety, we're worried about this. So for that reason, I'm their names are probably out there, but I'm just not going to put them out there more. But I can say that of these 4 witnesses, 3 of them were alleged victims, and I can say that when we finished up on Friday, there was at least 2 local media outlets, and the judge, throughout her recitation of how she felt about the case and her decision, mentioned more than a half dozen times that several of the witnesses had credibility issues.
Wow.
And and she kept saying state, and she named the witnesses who specifically had credibility issues. Um, uh, uh, at least one of them was a victim. I don't remember if one of the other victims, if she said that he also had a credibility issue, but knocking his credibility realistically wasn't going to change a whole lot, because it's, they just have to prove each element by a preponderance. So, you beat him up a little bit, but you don't want to beat him up too much, because you want him on the stand for a while to just get bombarded by all the false statements and all their, what do they call them, picadillos in their past, to come up and haunt them. I mean, that one of the videos we have showed one of the victims who said that she doesn't remember having any confrontation with a civil guard member, but there's a very, very, very specific shouting match and her getting physical with this civil guard guy who's just standing there, that she's miraculously forgot in all this time. But I think that all leads to the credibility issues that the state has with their issues. And between us, I don't think that even the judge saying that there's major credibility issues is going to change much of what they do.
Right. So, so that hearing wrapped up, what happens from now? What goes on? What's next?
So they had Steven charged with 2 felony counts, ag assault or ag bat, deadly weapon, and ag bat, great bodily harm, and then a simple battery charge and a unlawful carrying of a weapon charge. So 2 felonies, 2 misdemeanors. One of the felonies was downgraded to a misdemeanor, and with quite a bit of commentary by the judge about the case.
Mm-hmm.
That will next go to arraignment. We could have, if the prosecution was ready, we could have gone to arraignment that day, but New Mexico has, or Albuquerque, the Bernalillo County has very specific deadlines and how quickly they need to turn over discovery, and they don't have all the discovery ready. So surprisingly, they still don't have several of their main witnesses' statements that are there. So it's that he'll go to an arraignment. We'll get the date on Monday, and then from there we'll get a trial setting. In this day and age, though, who knows how long it'll take. At a certain point, we'll need to digest all this. There's a lot of investigation and background into their witnesses. My theory going forward is if the state wants to call them, then they're probably a lot to dig up in their past.
Right. What happened yesterday? Who in the last day of this preliminary hearing?
So the last day was when we presented our evidence. We entered our evidence in, and strange thing is our first witness was the original detective who filed the original complaint. And if you would have just plopped anybody in at that point, you would have thought that I was a prosecutor and the prosecutor was a defense attorney, because I was trying to ask questions of what was happening, and the prosecutor was doing his damnedest to keep all of that out.
Huh.
So this detective, I really believe she got on the case probably 8, 9, 10 o'clock on that night.
Mm-hmm.
She worked it overnight, got the paperwork to arrest Steven. He was booked. I think she said she went home and showered and came back to do more work, and a little while later found out that the case had been taken away from Albuquerque Police Department and given to the New Mexico State Police.
Right. And I remember we discussed that. I've got that original criminal complaint here. And what was remarkable about it was the manner in which the officer described the mob. And she had written, quote, "The group appeared to maliciously pursue Steven, with several of the crowd's individuals physically striking Steven's body with their hands and legs."
Yep.
So Not peaceful. Not peaceful. Riot.
No.
Riot would be the more accurate term for what happened and what Stephen experienced, in my opinion.
It was interesting talking with the officer and watching the other side. I think the prosecution was, in my opinion, they were arguing in ways that I think is going to haunt them in the future. And I'm, for one, going to make sure that I make it haunt them in the future. You know, if your investigation is what it is, if you don't like, you know, if we don't like how an investigation's going, we don't get to just give it to a new agency. But, you know, they're using their power and abilities to create a narrative. And so they're, you know, it should be telling that in a preliminary hearing like this, there wasn't one officer who testified.
Yes.
It's 4 civilian witnesses.
Yeah.
All of them who are, you know, many of them who have credibility issues, as the judge put it.
Yes.
But they're really going after this case with everything they got. And it's, you know, unfortunately, at a preliminary hearing, self-defense can come up, but you can't. It's a factual issue that the jury has to decide it. The judges are rarely going to take that out of a jury's hands. So we were able to knock them around quite a bit. I think it was eye-opening for the people who are. If you're one-sided looking at this, then much like the media reports, the people who are tweeting about it, the people who are writing about it, none of them caught the fact that judge says major witnesses have credibility issues. I mean, these are these are going to be the bulk of their witnesses at trial.
Right. And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, these witnesses had to be, I don't know if dragoon is the right way. They had to be solicited, right? They had to be sought out. Is that correct?
Well, we don't know for sure because we don't have all the discovery to say how they got a hold of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think at first they might have been trying to say that they were John Does and Jane Does for safety purposes. I don't know, but yeah, I think that they had to ask for them. I think that the named victim on the felony great bodily harm, you know, she claimed that, you know, she had this great bodily harm. She went to a local favorite spot and had a burrito probably, and like she testified that a police officer gave her a card, and I believe that she was asked whether or not she ever called him, and I think she said no. But you know, the gentleman who was shot they knew him and they knew where he was and talked to him early on. That was done.
Yeah, right, right.
Some of the other ones, we don't know when they came forward, how they came forward. To speak to that though, all the witnesses who testified had their attorneys either with them or on Zoom. A couple of them had they're basically immunity letters. 2 of the witnesses had immunity letters saying, you know, we're not going to go after you for your charges as long as or anything that you did, as long as you tell us everything that happened. Now after the fact, they're probably going to say, well, I never asked for immunity. I don't need immunity. But from what I remember, they signed the piece of paper. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that hasn't been reported anywhere either. And yeah, of course, you know.
Briefly touched on one of I think it was the Journal. I may have touched on it. Just briefly. It was like a little tiny sentence in it. I think my brother had caught it. I'm not too sure.
Interesting, but like as if it was an afterthought when this is, you know, incredibly impertinent, incredibly information. You know, and right for you, Diego, especially having worked on both the criminal defense side and as a prosecutor, this is how business is done, right, in the criminal justice system, right? I mean,
well, I mean, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, from our standpoint, myself and Jason Bowles, my co-counsel, who, again, wanted to extend his apologies for not being here. He's on, I think he's on a date night.
Yeah.
So, it's so hard to answer that question because, the preliminary hearing process is a little bit better than the grand jury system. The old joke about you could indict a ham sandwich at a grand jury.
Right.
It's a little bit better than that. It's been, the grand juries was almost exclusively the way that they indicted case felonies here. That's been beaten down quite a bit by, I think that the courts kind of saw that there was an abuse of that grand jury system. I think every grand jury that I've done, I've won several issues with the case, which is just, you can fight them a little bit, but it's pretty hard to get what's called a no bill with those. Preliminary hearings are a little bit better because the judge gets to make a decision, but in this case, when you have a self-defense defense, you can't present that much. You're not going to win that at that setting. Nobody ever is.
Right.
There's a very technical way to introduce it, and we did that to show that he didn't intend to injure these people or harm these people. It was to protect himself and save himself, right?
Yes.
But its preponderance of the evidence is just a little bit more than 50%. It's not a huge burden for them. But I've never seen a case prosecuted this way. I've never seen a local law enforcement agency get thrown under the bus, ridiculed for doing an investigation as best they could. The whole situation is crazy. We're finding out that night, Albuquerque Police Department's tactical plan basically was going to allow the statue to be pulled down.
Yes.
They're going to allow the statue to pull down. Now, if people start breaking anything else in the museum, or if there's people are getting harmed, they said that they were going to come in. But that's just kind of, that's a major concession for a law enforcement agency to say that, but they're now damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Yes.
This case is just mind-boggling how it's going down.
Yes. We've got a lot of people who are just joining in. It's Saturday night. And so I just want you to recap, because John Clark just had a basic question. What is Steven being charged with?
So, ag assault deadly weapon was for the shooting of the gentleman who hit him with a skateboard. That is a third-degree felony. That's that charge. There is a now misdemeanor assault charge for the incident with the girl in the camouflage jacket. And then there is a petty misdemeanor battery for an incident where they say that he shoved another woman down when Steven was actually just trying to protect another innocent bystander. And then the final one was unlawful carrying of a weapon. That's another, I think that's a full misdemeanor.
Gotcha. And I want everybody to know that you can go to michellemalkin.com and find my Stand with Steven Baca column there. And I've got the fundly.com campaign, Stand with Steven Baca. I'm going to share that screen with everybody so you can see. It's really incredible how many people have stepped up to the plate. And since we launched the fundraiser a little under 2 months ago, there it is, nearly $50,000, 1,022 donors. We've got 3 days left to reach a $100,000 goal. And in part, it's I think there's a symbolism to the 100K goal, because as I mentioned, 100K is about as much as George Soros donated to the district attorney, Raul Torres of Bernalillo County, who is trying this case, and I've made the point that grassroots patriots, people who are sick of the statues being torn down, this monumental madness that's gripped this country for more than 2 months now, need to step up to the plate and do something about it. And you would think that in a country of 350 million people that we could find enough small donors to at least match the amount for Steven that Soros donated to the district attorney that is prosecuting him and trying to persecute him for his exercise of his self-defense rights. So that is my pitch to you. And we've got about 10 minutes left with Steven and Diego, and then I'm going to stay on. I've acquired a number of videos related to this event that I want to go over with you all so that you get the truth about it, and then talk more in context of Steven's case in relation to what's going on in other parts of America where other ordinary citizens are facing things like this. It's so incredibly important to have lawyers like Diego and Jason Bowles who are going to be able to do the work that they need to do to combat these kinds of prosecutions. Steven, I wanted to ask you how you're doing, just in terms of being able to cope with this, because it's like this thing it's like a Damoclean sword like that's my English major reference.
Showing its head.
This thing that's just hanging over your head. And do you all know like how long it might take for a trial date to actually be set?
Well, there hasn't been a trial in Bernalillo County since I think mid-March. So when you're talking about speedy trial, all those cases we're just getting in the queue.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Some cases you literally push and push and push to get to trial as soon as you can. The problem with this is this could be one of those trials where the defenses last longer than the prosecution. If they don't plan to call any police officers, if they don't, they're cherry picking their investigation, they can just bring those witnesses in to say what the officers investigated. We have a lot of background that we need to find on these witnesses. There's going to be some experts that need to be hired to show dozens of different things that are popping up in this case, and there's a lot of work that's there. We don't want to drag it out. We want to get this in front of a jury. They're not showing any desire to let up on anything, and Steven needs to have his day in court.
Yeah. Is your attitude the same, Steven? Bring it on?
Yeah, bring it on. But at the same time, like you said, there's this thing over your head. You just want to live your life, but it's always in the back of your head. I have to go through this process. I have to go through this process.
Yeah.
And it's been what can I say? Just trying to stay away from it, but you can't at the same time. It's kind of in front of you. It's kind of a weird experience.
Yeah. I think that Diego referenced, having to sit through that process last week and have all sorts of things said about you. And it's not like you could say anything. You just had to sit there and watch and listen. Right?
I would probably say it's kind of frustrating, but I'm grateful for all the support that I've gotten from you. I'm grateful for all the support I've gotten from all the donors who have given to the Fundly. I'm grateful for the help my attorneys have given me, and it's just been a crazy experience. Would rather have not have been put in this position, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And I know you have a great support system as well. What's it been like, in terms of, other members of the community? I have, and I'm just speaking for myself, I've been a little bit frustrated at the lack of sort of national attention to this case, by many groups or individuals that fashion themselves as guardians of the Second Amendment. I mean, you can't avoid the fact that the case has been politicized. It occurred in this, environment of, all of these conflagrations. You've got Black Lives Matter, you've got Antifa, and if you don't want to comment on it, you don't have to. But this is set up here as I think as a template, right? Because I think there are a lot of people, and I know there are in DC, that see this as an opportunity to undermine the right of ordinary citizens to be able to defend themselves. And that's so especially important when police are standing down. I mean, the fact that you mentioned that, that there was some decision made from on high to allow these mobsters and these rioters to tear down the statue, and that's happening everywhere. The retreat orders, the stand down orders. I mean, this is no way to have a functioning society. Any thoughts, either of you?
Well, the problem that I see with it is that you have the rule of law. Like where does it start and where does it begin? So we're going to make the concession that a certain group of people can tear down a statue that they don't like. So that's fine. You made that decision, but part of that is it'll show that they knew that they were going to be allowed to take that statue. So you're bolstering and you're giving people a sense of bulletproof. Like we're look at what we're able to do. Look at what we can do. So when people start seeing the videos and the local Channel 7 news is not going to hear, the people aren't going to hear what the protesters who want to pull down the statue, they're not going to hear what they're saying because they're going to have to bleep it all out because it's the 10 o'clock news. So
Right.
You're not going to hear the F bombs and calling people pieces of crap, and you're not going to hear all that. So the local consumer is just thinking, oh, that's okay. But this group got mad because somebody stood up to them and said, hey, you can't do that. And they're pissed because the state, the city, whoever's told them that they could. And the added complication in all this is the civil guard, who is a bunch of guys who, from what I've seen in all the video I've seen, stood around holding guns or leaning on guns. And in fact, there's one surveillance video that shows one of the guys getting sucker punched by the girl who chased after Stephen. And then they're given immunity for their attacking Stephen. And the truth is that they didn't know all the facts, but they saw that the crowd was getting angry and they fed off that, and they decided that they were going to join into it and they're going to go after Stephen, not knowing the full story. And the full story sucks for the other side, and they did everything they could to not present the full story over the preliminary hearing. And the judge understood that. She got it. She commented on how it was odd that they are only presenting part of it, but it's their burden is to do what they had to prove, and she can't change that. Most of the stuff that we wanted to present will not change a preliminary hearing. It will not change that. We're not about to put Stephen on the stand at a preliminary hearing. Mm-hmm. To do that, that's not how it's going to go. So we're fighting all the other places, and we'll keep on fighting and showing people this. And we're hopeful over time. Last time I said we're being cautious about getting the full story out there, but now it's starting to get out there, and it's the responsibility of the media to honestly report. I mean, a judge calling main witnesses, commenting on their credibility, that should be above the fold stuff. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. Stephen, I think this is a good point about how frustrating it is to get the true story out when so much of it is sanitized by your local media. And, there's still this larger myth that the so-called protest that you were involved in was a so-called peaceful protest, and that the people who were defending the statue, the people who were, praying for peace, were actually the victims and not the victimizers. Is there anything that you wanted to, sort of end on here about, the whole experience and what it's like to be lied about? Let alone, of course, face the prospect of being prosecuted and convicted for being the law-abiding citizen.
I would say overall it's been frustrating, especially like you just said with the stuff that I just said about you, especially with when people don't know the full story and they just jump to a conclusion, or they see 10 seconds of a situation, not even 10 seconds, 5 seconds of a situation, but they don't know what happened the other 30 seconds of a situation, and they're willing to essentially persecute you for that 5 seconds before they know the full story. And that's probably the most frustrating part. And overall, the kind of the media blackout on it has just kind of been frustrating. They only report the things that they essentially want to hear. And overall, I guess the blackout on conservative media, that is kind of frustrating. I can't explain on that one.
Yeah.
But there has been a few other sites that I didn't think would comment on it, and they've actually been fairly truthful on it, which is actually kind of enlightening. And their viewpoints are probably completely 100% opposite of what I would normally agree with, but they have commented and been fair on those. And overall, I would like to restate thank you for all the support, Michelle, and thank you for everything that you've done, and thank you for all the supporters and everyone who's donated to my Fundly. Big thank you. I try to read every comment. I wish I could respond, but given the way it's set up, you can't respond. But thank you. That's my response.
Well, thank you guys for spending your Saturday night with us, and I'm going to stay on and just talk more about the case and see what we can do tonight. I remember the Jerry Lewis telethons and all that. It'll be a little bit like that, and hopefully get more in depth with people and give more sort of general commentary. Emmanuel King, I'm just going to end on this comment. Let's see, he's commenting on the YouTube stream, says, justice for Steven Baca. You did nothing wrong. And that is definitely the message that we're going to get out tonight. And we'll keep in touch with you. And you are in our prayers, Steven. And thank you, Diego. Thank you, Jason, for showing what lawyers need to do in these types of cases, stepping up to the plate. So good night. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Michelle. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so there's the lowdown, and I want you to hang with me, okay? A lot of you tuned in a little bit late or in the middle, didn't get the whole story, and so I'm going to be spending the next hour really delving into the case. I have acquired video clips. A lot of these were floating around on the internet. But I think it's really important to get the truth out there and unsanitized. And that is the competitive advantage that I have, right, over CNN or the local stations in Albuquerque who, just as Steven and Diego mentioned, are going to sanitize out all of the worst violent aspects of Antifa and Black Lives Matter. This is why alternative media is so important. This is why it's so important that we have people in Washington, D.C. who are willing and able to fight on behalf of independent creators, content creators. this is why the fight for armed self-defense is tied to the fight against Silicon Valley censorship. How many of you all watched my Newsmax show tonight? Give me a Y in comments, just a letter Y if you watched Newsmax and you came on here onto my live streams afterwards, right? We covered, even in the small half hour that I have on Newsmax, I think more in depth, the importance of fighting Silicon Valley censorship than pretty much anywhere you will get on corporate media. And of course, there are a few exceptions, but I'm hoping that my Newsmax show, Sovereign Nation, is bringing you material and information and guests that you will not see anywhere else. And as I mentioned in my opening monologue on Sovereign Nation, what we're seeing is the institution of a Chinese-style social credit system here in America. Okay? There's sins of omission and there's sins of commission. And the corporate media, especially as it relates to Steven Baca's case, is committing malpractice on a scale that we haven't seen before, selecting what constitutes news or not, and then shaping that news to fit their social justice agenda. It was not Steven Baca who instigated the violence and the rioting in Albuquerque. It wasn't the McCloskeys in St. Louis who were responsible for menacing and harassment and illegal invasion of peaceful neighborhoods, right? There are so many examples all across this country of Americans who are being persecuted for defending their rights. And today, earlier today, we saw it, right? Now, once again, the so-called mainstream media is waging war on the Proud Boys, one of the organizations early on that forecast what we've been seeing for the last couple of months and stepped up to the plate to try and do something about it. So the next hour is a telethon, like I said. And I see that there are, thousands of people who have watched and responded to these live streams. And if you can just give $5 or $10, the power of numbers can help combat the likes of Soros and his billions. It's the only way that we're going to do it. Okay, this is my frustration with so many of these Conservatism Inc. organizations. They say, they talk, they posture about fighting the culture war, about defending people against the mob. But have any of them told you about Steven Baca's case? Have any of them lifted a privileged finger to donate even a cent to Steven's Fundly campaign? And by the way, speaking of censorship, his loved ones tried to start the original fundraising campaign on GoFundMe, and they were censored. Their campaign was deleted, and I stepped up to the plate and started Steven's fundraising campaign at fundly.com. I'm going to share this screen again with you so that you can see it, so that you know where to go. The URL is there. Is Stand with Steven Baca. Here it is. And let's see. I'm going to refresh that. See, yes, thank you. We've gotten about a dozen more donors since I started. 1,036 donors now. $48,818 raised. We have a goal of 100,000. I don't know if we're going to get there. We have 2 days left. If you show me that you have donated $5 or $10 and send me a link or a comment, I will read your name. I will thank you personally. I know I mentioned like a Jerry Lewis or a March of Dimes type telethon. And I remember when I was, I think I was a sophomore in high school, and I would always perform. Many of you know that I play the piano, so I would perform with my brother. We do duets, whatnot. We do several pieces for our local Atlantic City New Jersey March of Dimes telethon. Unfortunately, I'm a little too far from the piano, otherwise I would do it. Anyway, if someone donates $100, I'll call my son to bring me a ukulele, and I'll play you a song on the ukulele. Okay, so if you show me $100, I'll do that. Like I said, any $5 or $10 donors, I will read your name here. So tuck in, because this is going to be fun. As well, of course, very serious. And like I said, I promised you that I was going to play some of the videos of Steven's case. I played one earlier in the last hour, but I'm going to play a little bit of it again, so you understand exactly what happened to Steven as he and some of his friends in the neighborhood in Tigway Park. If I've got any Albuquerque, New Mexico residents who are watching, you will recognize this. The statue that was torn down by Antifa and BLM was a statue of a Spanish colonizer, a conquistador who's credited with settling New Mexico. His name is Juan del Oñate, had been a controversial figure with the Native American community there. These people didn't get over the fact that they lost, and then they used the George Floyd incident to nurse their old grievances and wreak havoc and anarchy, because that is what the left does. Okay, so let's review that. Let's see. I'll stop this. I'm going to play that video, and I have other exclusive video that I have obtained that I want to go over, so you see just how riotous, how dangerous and violent that situation was that forced Steven Baca to have to defend himself. And I thank you to the commenters who earlier had said, while Steven was on with his lawyer, that this was the clearest case of justified self-defense that they have seen. I absolutely agree. That's why I'm so passionate about this case. So this happened exactly 2 months ago tonight. And here is what happened. If some of you were not paying attention, you know, this is what bothers me about the news cycle, is these things will pop up, they'll go viral, and then so much of the corporate media will get the clickbait, they'll get, you know, their 3-minute segment out of it, and then they'll forget it, right? If you're lucky, you know, you'll get a couple seconds coverage. And of course, mysteriously, there have been almost no other conservative figures that have covered this case other than me. Why is that? Why is that? Here's what we're looking at. Let me bring this up again for you, just a refresh. That's Steven in the blue. Beaten with the skateboard. Okay, so you heard the gunshots there, and you can see what exactly was happening as that mob was assaulting Steven. These people were allowed to run rampant, these animals, these rioters. And I have video that I want to show you of other encounters, other violent encounters that the local media won't show, that the Washington Post, which I think was one of the only national outlets that covered it, of course, sympathetic to this violent mob and whitewashing everything that happened. Let me see if I can bring that up for you now. How many of you saw that? How many of you remember that? Michael Running Deer says, did he shoot them? As that mob was falsely accusing him of being a police officer, calling him an instigator, telling each other to get his license plate, and like I said, assaulting him, that woman that I had shown earlier in the hour, who had this large bag that had the megaphone, the clipboards, all of these hard objects that she beat Steven with, were all descending on him as the Albuquerque Police Department essentially was stood down. And he did draw his weapon, and he shot one of the mobsters who had been involved in assaulting him, a man named Scott Williams, and that is the felony charge that he is facing, to answer Michael Running Deer's question. Here is more video that I wanted to show you. Let's see if I can pull this up, where you can see the tactic that I talked about with Steven last week on Sovereign Nation, of women being used as frontline shields, essentially, right? Human shields for Antifa. And just like with the so-called wall of moms, right? The so-called wall of moms that we've seen in the Pacific Northwest, these women will clean up, right? And they'll pretend to be peaceful. And then when people aren't paying attention, they're the ones that are, like in Portland and Seattle, setting things on fire and breaking into buildings in the middle of the night when nobody's watching. And in Steven's case, what is captured on video is at least two of these women initiating assaults and sucker punching people that were the actual victims, the actual peaceful, I guess you could call them counter protesters, but they weren't even protesting, right? In Steven's case, he was trying to protect other women who had been there praying, including Esther Rivera, who I interviewed on my YouTube channel, which you can go back and find that from exactly 2 months ago. I'm going to try and bring up this other video for you. And in the meantime, I'm just going to remind you, let's see, it's fundly.com/stand with Steven Baca. If I've missed your comment, if you've donated, just redo it again and remind me. I don't have a producer, so I'm looking at this all myself. J. Ronnie 3333 says, I will defend myself. And that's absolutely the attitude that we have to have. And you're seeing more people stand up and do that. And what we need to do is not only be capable and trained and skilled at defending ourselves, but we have to make sure that we have legal defense. And we can only do that if we stand together and do it in numbers. That's why I'm doing this. I hope you understand that that's why this case is important, okay? We are all Steven Baca. And, you know, when we find ourselves in a situation similar to him, I think we would all hope and pray that people would come to our defense the way that more than 1,000 people have done in donating to the Stand with Steven Baca Fund. Every single cent goes towards his legal defense. They're headed toward arraignment now, and then they'll have to schedule a trial date. And in the meantime, this is not free, okay? Because unlike all of the taxpayers subsidized liberal lawyers that are at the ready to defend the mob. Oh, and by the way, here's another thing that's so important, okay? This is what you have to keep in mind. You know that Hollywood is donating to all of these bail funds for these Antifa animals and Black Lives Matter thugs, right? All of Hollywood. They've raised hundreds of millions of dollars for the rioters, the looters, the brick throwers, the Molotov cocktail lighters, like that, overnight. And I started this fundraiser for Stand with Steven Baca 2 months ago. It's incredible that we've been able to raise as much as we have, but we just have a couple days left. And I would like to be able to say at the end of it, yes, we were able to raise as much money for Steven Baca as George Soros donated to the district attorney that is prosecuting him. His name is Raul Torres of Bernalillo County. He's doing the bidding of Antifa and Black Lives Matter. This case has become completely politicized, and we can't just leave a man and abandon him on the battlefield. Okay? I need you to understand that. Okay, I've got this other video lined up that I want to show you. Let's see. Let me share my screen with you all. Stand with Steven Baca. Yes, thank you, Frank Guesswine. Let's see. Let's do it this way. All right. Can you all see that? Give me a yes if you can see this full screen. Yes. Thank you, Nico DiCarlo. Okay. I am going to see if I can get this to start. Turn up the sound. And I want you to pay close attention while it's in a screen, while it's frozen right here. That woman with the mask and the big bun right there, sort of left of center with the megaphone, right? You can recognize her. She's the same one who was running in the street chasing Steven. Okay, this is just a little bit before that. And I want you to watch carefully what that Black Lives Matter woman does. Okay, there's no audio here. Let's see. If I can get the audio to work. But it was completely chaotic. Just keep watching her, okay? So she's got the megaphone. Thank you, Chris Murray, for donating. I'm going to get rid of the banner here so that you can see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop it for just a second. Let's see. Let me bring it back. All right, so you see megaphone girl, bag lady, I call her, because her bag had all of this hard objects in it. That's her on the left side of the screen. Down in the right lower corner, there is a confrontation that's about to occur. And what's happening here is that the mob is trying to prevent the, we'll call them counter protesters, from trying to protect the Oñate statue. And that there on the right lower part is Esther Rivera, the older woman, and that's Steven right there. And they're defending themselves against this mob that is blocking them from getting to the statue. Steven is trying to protect Esther Rivera, and he had been split off from her. And then that's him standing there in front of the statue. And you can see that they are not confrontational. Here he is trying to make sure that Esther is okay. And next to the statue is a man in a camo hat. He's with the New Mexico Civil Guard. Make sure you watch Megaphone Bag Girl. Here she is. Watch her, okay? Watch carefully. She's screaming at him, and then she struck him. She struck him. Look, he's going to be double teamed because this woman in front of him with the camouflage jacket is also very aggressive and violent. There she is. You see that? Hitting the New Mexico Civil Guard member. Hitting him again. He's just hanging on to the statue. There. She's punching him again in the head. And here's Camo Girl starting in. Watch carefully. So Megaphone Bag Lady has punched him in the head 4 times. He's just standing there. She's coming closer. Okay, there's Camo Lady shoving into the New Mexico Civil Guard member. And this is all escalating, you know, crescendoing towards the statue being torn down. And of course, APD is nowhere to be found. And did you see that? Let's watch that again. Let's watch the peaceful female protester again. Here she comes. Here she comes. Wham! Wham! Okay? So why is it, my friends? Okay. Sucker punched the New Mexico Civil Guard. That's at least 5 blows that this woman administered. Okay? Are you going to see that on the local news? Let me get that out of there. Do you see that, everyone? Okay. I'm going to post that as a separate clip. All right? And I want you to share it. That's what you need to know about these women who are the front line for Antifa and BLM. Is that woman being charged with anything? No. Is her name being dragged through the mud? No. Has she been accused of being a criminal and a public menace? No. It's Steven Baca who's the one whose life has been turned upside down. It's absolutely outrageous. Who has the privilege? Is it Steven Baca, who's been smeared not only by left-wing media, but the Daily Caller, which I called out? They blamed the victim. They bought into the false narrative. This is a problem with so much of Conservatism Inc. That's why I'm spending my Saturday night with you. And now you've seen it with your own eyes. And when I share the clip, I want you to share it as well. That's why I'm doing this. It's absolutely outrageous. The truth has to get out there. You heard Steven's lawyer talk about the judge at the preliminary hearing casting doubt on the credibility of the Soros DA's witnesses. A joke, a complete joke. In fact, I can't remember who told me this, but it was joked after the hearing process was over last week that Soros is going to want his money back from this DA. And people need to know this. People need to know that there are good lawyers out there willing to fight the Soros establishment, okay? It's not free. It's not free, right? There should be, the New Mexico GOP should be issuing statements condemning this false prosecution, this wrongful prosecution. Where are they? All right, do I have any New Mexico folks in the audience? Right? Demand accountability from your GOP. Demand accountability from your Second Amendment organizations. And just as a side note, the reason why this case is of national importance is that at the same time that the Soros DA is going after Steven Baca, there's another separate case that was announced at the same time to level a civil injunction against the New Mexico Civil Guard. Okay, they are being cast as well as white supremacists and essentially domestic terrorists, when these domestic terrorists of Antifa and BLM get to tear down statues and punch people in the head multiple times with impunity. Fortunately, the New Mexico Civil Guard has a good lawyer and legal team as well. But you can see what's happening here, and you can see why it matters in your neighborhood. Because if you can't have your own civil guard, if you can't have your own armed citizen organizations, who is left to defend you? The police stand back. Rank and file cops who wish they could do something can't because they would be fired. You have police chiefs and sheriffs who are literally kneeling to Black Lives Matter, or as in Denver, nearby, as I experienced, marching arm in arm with Black Lives Matter, and then a couple of weeks later, watching Black Lives Matter beat protesters, peaceful protesters who are showing up at Back the Blue rallies. Do you see why this is so important? Do you see why it's so important? I'm going to put up the Fundly page again. Stand with Steven Baca. Okay. Let's see. Who's donated? Like I said, if there's anyone who's donated $100, I'll play you a couple of chords on the ukulele. If you've donated $5 or $10, I will read out your name. Thank you personally. If you got someone you want me to wish a happy birthday to, or a happy wedding anniversary to, I'll do that as well. Somebody asks Melissa Bennett, where are you posting the clips? I will post them on my YouTube channel. You're watching it right here, youtube.com/Michelle Malkin. I'll also share the clips on Twitter. And if you're watching me on Facebook, just make sure you're following me on these other platforms. This is the first time I've done a simultaneous stream where I'm streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. God knows how long I'm going to be able to do this. God knows how long I'm going to be able to do the Newsmax show. You all know that I've been targeted by both the left and the right establishments. They don't want me to tell the truth. They don't want me to cover the stories that I'm covering for you. I've done investigative journalism now for nearly 30 years. There's so many people who lie about me, who call me a hate monger, who have cast me as some sort of bubblehead or lightweight pundit. When those of you who have followed my work in my newspaper column for more than a quarter century, all 7 of my investigative books know that I back up my opinions with fact. And I do this because I care about ordinary people who are having to fight these fights on their own. I didn't know Steven Baca. I didn't know anything about him. I get nothing. I get no benefit out of spending the time that I have. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have some nonprofit. I'm not funded by a billionaire, right? For grassroots people, for grassroots nationalists, for grassroots America Firsters. That's not where the money is. That's not why I do this. Every single cent that is raised in this Fundly.com campaign for Steven Baca will go to his legal defense. And if and when, because I say when, not whether, he wins his case, he and his supporters and loved ones have promised to do work on behalf of others who are similarly situated, who face wrongful persecution and wrongful prosecution for exercising their Second Amendment self-defense rights. I need to take a drink. This is the first time I'm doing something like this, you know, to dedicate an evening and to talking about so many of these issues. And I'm going to play you a little bit more video from this, but there were a lot of things that happened today in the news, and I tweeted one of them, and I want to share this video with you because it's also very directly related. So, I have been warning, and in one of my most recent columns, syndicated columns, which you can find at creators.com, which is my syndicate, MichelleMalkin.com, which redirects to uns.com, which happens to be, by the way, banned by Facebook, right? So all of my column content, peaceful political speech, is censored by Facebook, along with everything else that is on the uns.com site as dangerous content, right? Very similar to what happened to Laura Loomer, which I talked about on Sovereign Nation this evening. Well, I had done a column where I called out the Anti-Defamation League and the mainstream media for dismissing warnings that Antifa and Black Lives Matter were moving from Portland and Seattle and Los Angeles and Baltimore and Philadelphia into the suburbs, into flyover country, and into communities that white people live in, right? They said it was racist. They called me and others who warned about it conspiracy theorists. And yes, they invoked the nuclear bomb of accusing me of being, quote unquote, anti-Semitic for exposing the Soros subsidies of all of these district attorneys and, of course, of these domestic terrorist organizations, Antifa and Black Lives Matter. For my exposés, calling them and showing them to be lying liars, they ratcheted up the smear campaign against me. Well, here we have a perfect illustration of exactly what I've been talking about. This is from Minnesota. My friends at Alpha News MN posted this. I'm going to share this with you all and see if I can get the audio with it as well. Check this out. Hey, can you guys hear the audio? Let me know if you can hear it. Y or N if you can't.
You go Minnesota, skiing up here. I'm a black man being terrorized by this fucking Klansman right here. We are terrorized by the Grand Wizard. Y'all got the Grand Wizard living in your goddamn neighborhood. All the Klan exists in Hugo, Minnesota, and it's right here. Don't run now. Don't run now, racist white people. I'm here. Oh yeah, we pull up. We pull the fuck up. And we're here. Come on over here with your Blue Lives Matter saying. Blue lives ain't shit. And if people in Hugo don't support black people, fuck Hugo, Minnesota. I meant to say that. Now we can get to what I was talking about. Like skiing up here. I'm a black man being terrorized by this fucking Klansman right here. We are terrorized by the Grand Wizard. Y'all got the Grand Wizard living in your goddamn neighborhood. All the Klan exists in Hugo, Minnesota, and it's right here. Don't run now. Don't run now, racist white people.
You see that? You see that? Now let me read the caption because you might not be able to read that, the caption that was along with it. That man, this crazy animal, won his primary for a state office in St. Paul. His name is John Thompson, and he's screaming at children. Those are young children and residents and neighbors of the police union president in Hugo, Minnesota, whose name is Bob Kroll. Okay, this is not going to be on the local news because there's no way to sanitize these animals marching in to suburban neighborhoods to harass police officers who are keeping the peace and doing their jobs. That looks very familiar to me because it happened about 15 to 20 minutes from where I live last week in a neighborhood called Pulpit Rock in Colorado Springs, where another police officer was targeted by Black Lives Matter and Antifa, many of them toting AR-15s. In fact, I'm going to pull it up for you to remind you of this because you see, it's all of a piece. And in my neighborhood, like this neighborhood in Hugo, Minnesota, the police officers stood down and did nothing. In my neighborhood, the Antifa animals were toting AR-15s, blocking traffic, harassing neighbors and motors, and marching right up to the private homes of a police officer and his neighbors to intimidate them, to threaten them with violence. It's happening everywhere. Police standing down, ordinary law-abiding citizens forced to take up arms and risk their lives. Do you see why the Steven Baca case matters so much to me? Do you see why it's so important to defeat a Soros-subsidized district attorney and set a precedent? Here, let me remind you of what happened in my neighborhood, just like that animal yelling at teenage girls in Hugo, Minnesota. All right, let me see if I can get this to be big. It's Colorado Springs last week.
If that weapon comes up, you will be shot. No, fucking you will.
Okay, just like how you do to us, right? Just like how you do to us, right? Us every single day, man. If you pull the weapon, you gonna pull yours too. You got the same self-defense. If I had a weapon on me, would you pull yours up? If you point out.
All right, I'm going to freeze it right here, okay? Because you see this woman with her AR-15 in the mask right there in the middle? I believe that that is the same woman who pulled out a collapsible baton behind me at the Back the Blue rally just a couple of weeks ago, where my friends and allies and fellow supporters of the police were beaten bloody. Just inches, literally, from me behind stage, this woman took out her baton. I believe it's the same woman, an Antifa vigilante. Let me see if I can bring that up. Police stood down, did nothing. Not a single charge has been brought against these people. I'll bring that up in a second. So you can see what's happening. Hey, let's check on the fundraiser and see how we're doing. I'm going to refresh it. Hey, look at that. We have now crossed the 50,000 threshold. That is so awesome, people. That's why I'm working hard tonight. I'm going to have to take another drink here. Do some stretching. We're working. I appreciate it. Let me share the screen with you. That is so awesome. I'm so glad so many of you are hanging with me. More than 1,300 people after nearly an hour and a half of broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. Look at that. Amazing. Yay. Thank you so much, everybody. We got this. We pushed now towards more than half of our goal. And remember, the reason that $100,000 is the goal is that is around the amount of money that George Soros donated to the district attorney in Bernalillo County, New Mexico, that is persecuting and prosecuting Steven Baca for his wholly justified self-defense. Awesome. Awesome, you guys. I so appreciate you. Let's see. I'm going to look on the donor page here. Maybe it's an easier way for me to figure out. Let's see if anyone's done $100 donation, because like I said, I will strum a ukulele for anybody who donates $100. I don't know if I can play. I'll have to figure out if I can. You don't want to hear me sing. I'm really not that great a singer. That's my son. He's the singer in the family. Let's see. Donors. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if this is like updated and listed as most recent, but keep sending me comments. Somebody wants me to play the accordion. Ha ha ha. I'll have to learn that. I want to play the piano for you, but it's too far. I'll have to arrange that for next time. I know. Oh, I know what I can do. So, and this is just a side note because, you know, this is how telethons go. You know, I'll veer off into different directions. But how many of you saw this story that some rapper got with Good Humor ice cream and has now rewritten the traditional Turkey in the Straw song that used to play on ice cream trucks because they falsely claimed that it had racist roots? Did you all hear about this? Right? It was the LA Times that spread this falsehood. It's a totally false narrative, and I will tell you about that in a second. See what else is going on here. Anyway, I played a little bit of Turkey in the Straw on the piano that I was going to post. I can play that for the first person who donates $100, and anyone else who matches it. I'm actually just seeing some breaking news here of that's also related of BLM viciously attacking cops. Where is this? I don't know where this is. But you know, it is Saturday night live, and Saturday night, as you know, the freaks come out at night. Right? The freaks come out at night. I see a lot of people. David Besman has donated $100. Awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to see if I can get my son to bring me a ukulele. Hey, if you guys see other stories that you want me to comment on, yesterday on my Facebook live stream, I talked about the Millie Weaver arrest, which is just so chilling, so terrifying. And again, all of these things are of a piece. For her truth-telling, she apparently has been targeted for criminal prosecution. I believe that she was told during her live stream on Facebook by a police officer that there was some sort of grand jury indictment related to burglary. I believe her husband was also arrested, and, you know, not coincidentally, it was timed just as they were getting ready to release a bombshell documentary. I think it's called Shadowgate. I haven't had a time to watch it yet, but I believe it's on BitChute, and I also saw links to it on Twitter. And as I mentioned in my Facebook yesterday, she is an investigative reporter. She had done work for InfoWars. A lot of the alternative media now, of these young, brave journalists, you know, they need support too. And I believe that there's a GoFundMe that's been started for her as well. Of course, it's incredibly difficult now to be able to support these brave people because GoFundMe is itself such a politicized entity. As I mentioned, Steven's initial fundraiser that had been launched on GoFundMe was canceled, and that is why I stepped up to the plate to do the Fundly.com fundraiser. All right, David, I have asked my son to bring me a ukulele, and when he does, I will play you the only 4 chords I know on the ukulele. And there's really only 4 chords you need to know anyway. So thank you, David. Anyone else who does so, I will personally shout you out. Yes, Scott Phillips says GoFundMe is famous for canceling right-wing oriented causes. That is absolutely right. The same thing happened with a family that I've come to know and love, and whose son I'm crusading on behalf of. Another horrible, wrongful persecution and conviction, Daniel Holtzclaw, and his fundraiser is actually on a different platform. Tell you about that as well. On Go Get Funding. So there are alternatives for now. Free Daniel Holtzclaw's fundraising campaign started by his sister at Go Get Funding, but they also were canceled by GoFundMe as well. Let's see if my son is around. Hey, JD. All right, who else? How are we doing here? Looks like there's protests in Chicago, riots, protests. Let's just forget it. Why are we even saying that, right? Chicago riots, riots apparently now in front of the Postmaster General's house. I'm just looking at the Twitter trends, which of course are all selectively edited by the algorithms and the gremlins at Twitter, right? Nothing ever trends because it actually trends. It's because it's controlled opposition, right? You all know what that means, right? I'm not pretending that this is a free for all, right? That this is truly free speech on these platforms. I know my days are numbered, but I'm going to use them as long as I have them, and to do as much good as I possibly can here on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter as alternatives. And I've mentioned this, and I'll keep doing it. I sound like a broken record, but I know a lot of people sort of miss out on this, so I'm going to repeat it. You can find me on Parler or Parlay, however they say it, PARLER.com/Michelle Malkin. All of these videos that I'm doing are backed up at bitchute.com, BITCHUTE.com. You should be using an alternative search engine. How many of you use DuckDuckGo? Give me a Y if you do. DuckDuckGo. And you should also be using alternative browsers. I use Brave. Occasionally, I do have to use Chrome. Like I use it for very selectively and limited. I use it because when I do these live streams, I use a platform called StreamYard, and it just plays nicer with Chrome. But I avoid it as much as possible, and you should be too. And then my favorite alternate app is actually one that doesn't get a lot of attention. I just like it better. It's called Telegram, and you can find me there at Michelle Malkin. It's a little bit difficult to get used to, I guess, because it's not like Twitter, right? And it doesn't have the reply function is a little bit unwieldy. There's no notification function, but it reminds me of the early days of Twitter. That's why I like it. I mean, it just has this more organic feel. And you can download that app on your phone and to your desktop as well. So anyway, those are the alternatives that I do use. Yes, Safe Libraries. I love all of the work that you do. Thank you. And he gives a thumbs up to all of these alternatives that I've mentioned. Safe Libraries is such an important focus that he has on the American Library Association. These people are I mean, they're literal predators or predator enablers, radical leftists that are abusing our children, I believe. So make sure you follow Safe Libraries on Twitter. Oh, that's interesting. NPC Art says my Linux phone came with Telegram. Very, 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 very interesting. Hey, I've got more videos of related to the Steven Baca case, and I am going to pull up a couple of them. Let's see, how much? This is about 3 minutes. Okay, so this one was actually posted on Facebook, and it just, hopefully I'll be able to get the sound up here. I want to drive home this point that the violence was perpetrated by the mob, not by Steven Baca. And he's been lied about in so many places on social media. There's been a code of silence by people who should be coming to his aid, rushing to his aid, and talking about this case as much as I have been. And let's see if I can bring this one up. And in the meantime, shout me out again if you're a $100 donor, if you're a 5 or 10, so that I can name check you and thank you personally. Let's see, here we go. All right, here's another video. Let's share this one. I really want to get the audio on this as well. We just saw Steven walk by. You're so classy, aren't they?
Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. He's gonna fucking shoot. They were gonna shoot. The fucking militias out here.
The police are watching all of us.
These motherfuckers have pulled out their fucking guns. They're about to shoot people. See where the fucking violence is coming from.
Yeah, from
Check
you.
the violence, people.
You.
Hey! Don't touch them!
Now remember from the other video, you know that megaphone bag lady and camo girl have both sucker punched and assaulted that one New Mexico Civil Guard member in the head, and had also laid hands on Esther Rivera and Steven Baca as well.
Look at those motherfuckers with their guns. No. I'm on live.
Punched in the
Look
head.
at those motherfuckers threatening to pull their guns and start shooting people. They're fucking peaceful protest. Watch where the violence is coming from.
Yeah, we
Check these
watched.
motherfuckers out with their fucking guns and shit. Watch these motherfuckers. Remember his face. Remember his face. Remember his face. Remember his fucking.
Okay, so these people were inciting. They were already inciting. They knew what they wanted to do. They knew what they wanted to do. It's just it's just stunning. It's unbelievable when you see the false framing and then what actually happened and who is responsible. And that's why I've been broadcasting for an hour and 40 minutes now. And I appreciate all of you who've joined me and hung with me here. What is somebody saying about Proud Boys? Because, of course, that's related as well. You know, there are many Proud Boys who have been wrongfully persecuted, prosecuted, harassed, and smeared. 2 of them in New York who are serving time in prison, despite the radical leftist prosecutors not being able to lure any of the so-called victims to the stand because they hate the police. And in that case, Gavin McInnes had given a speech, and afterwards, the police essentially corralled the Proud Boys and helped engineer a situation that fomented a confrontation, a so-called street brawl between the 2 sides. It was supposed to be over and done with. The Democrats in New York seized the opportunity to exploit this and accuse the Proud Boys of instigating violence when that's exactly the opposite of what happened. And in each of these cases, what you're seeing is the steady chipping away at the ability of ordinary citizens to defend themselves. Some of you will recall that a couple of weeks ago, I wrote another column that I felt was very important, probably one of my most important columns that I've written in the last 30 years on the concept of anarcho-tyranny. It's a phrase that was first coined by the late columnist Sam Francis to describe a situation in which anarchy reigned, the mob ruled, and the elites in place acted as tyrants and enablers of the anarchists. And that's what we have with these district attorneys like Raul Torres and like Diane Becton in Contra Costa County. She's the one who has charged that couple who painted over the Black Lives mural with a so-called hate crime. Right? It's the circuit attorney in St. Louis who is going after the McCloskeys. And it will now, of course, be stretched to include whatever's going to happen to the Proud Boys in Kalamazoo, who are now being smeared across social media as a result of a confrontation there. And then here in Colorado, in Fort Collins, of course, we now have citizen groups that are forming to fight back against the mobs who've trashed our capital and who are spreading out into the suburbs. So we're going to do this a couple more times. I'm going to take your questions. I'm still waiting for my ukulele. In fact, you know what? I might go get it. I might play one other video and just take a stretch break while we do this. I do want to mention as well that another reason why this fundraiser is important is because all of these left-wing groups, just like Hollywood, pitching in to do these multi-million-dollar bail funds for all of these rioters. In New Mexico, there are local left-wing progressive groups that are raising money for the women who battered the New Mexico civil guardsmen and who were also responsible for laying hands on Esther Rivera, Steven Baca, and others. Okay, their people are rallying around these violent looters. We have to do our part. This is what it means to fight the culture war. This is what it means to stand up for America first. This is what it means to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. Right? That's what distinguishes the work that I do. A lot of people who've made really comfortable livings for themselves, who are now ensconced in coastal bubbles, who've bought, great, beautiful mansions in Palm Beach and, other enclaves, who live in DC. Easy. It's easy to preach. It's much harder to practice it, right? And that's what we do. That's what I have tried to do my entire career. And I think we need more help than ever. Because what we're seeing happen to Steven Baca is going to happen to more and more and more people. And I feel like if we can have a demonstration project, if we can have proof of concept, yes, we can do this. Yes, we can match Soros dollar for dollar. Yes, we can stand up for fellow citizens. And yes, we can break through all of the bread and circuses noise of so much of the shallow media on both the establishment left and establishment right. We can make something happen. And then, it's going to feel really, really good when at the end of this case, when Steven Baca and his name and his record are cleared, to say, yeah, we did that. We built that. And we didn't have a billionaire. And we didn't have the NRA. And we didn't have Fox News. But we did it together. We had each other. Fundly.com. Stand with Steven Baca. Let's see how we're doing. Awesome. 1,104 donors, $51,531 raised. We've got 2 days left. We are now more than halfway towards our goal. That is so, so awesome. I haven't forgotten you, David. I'm going to play a video and run and get a ukulele. Let's see if I can play a little bit of this other video just to give you a sense. Let's see.
Peaceful. I don't care. Soros. I get all my guns from Soros. What? She is trying to do it.
I'm just trying to pull this up.
Yeah, maybe because they interrupted our prayer with assault rifles. Maybe that's why it's not going how you expected.
Please no ukulele, RR channel says. What? I promised it. I promised it. Hang on, let me see if I can find another one of the videos. Oh, see, this is one reason why I don't have a radio talk show. I can't talk this long. People who have those 3-hour things, that's what I'm a scribe, right? I'm an extinct wretch. Let's see.
A protester. That's what's going on. That's the pattern. You have the white supremacists, again, interrupt the protest.
I'm just resting my voice a little bit. How are you guys all doing? Yeah, I have no commercials, no call-ins, anything like that. Just me. Let's see. Do we have any other big donors stepping up to the plate here? Working my best for you. What do you think? Right? We're coming up on 2 hours, so but we've got about 10 minutes left here. And then I'm going to also do another broadcast tomorrow as well. We'll have 1 day left after that. And I'm hoping that more of you will do your own research, do your own homework. I'm going to post several of the clips that we talked about tonight, and I need each and every one of you to help me. The donation page is still up. Yep, we've got 2 days left. And just going to bring that up for you again so you see it all. No, not that. It is here. All right, let's refresh it, see how we're doing. Woohoo! 3 more people just donated. 1,107 donors, $51,614 raised so far. Every cent counts, even if you can donate $5 or $10. That would be so awesome. You know, we've seen so many incredible displays of generosity of people who are outraged when the media won't cover stories. We saw that with the beautiful little boy, horrible, horrible tragedy, 5-year-old Cannon Hinnant, who was gunned down ruthlessly. We still don't have all of the details, but the point here is that media bias is so poisonous and toxic that the corporate media refused to cover this story. Clear case of selective filter, because the little boy was white and because the alleged murderer was black, they have to look the other way. And the same kind of framing, the same kind of false narratives certainly were at play in Steven's case. The left and the Democrat establishment in New Mexico falsely smeared him as some sort of white supremacist. Many of you may recall also that I was livid that Juan Williams, to the extent that this story got any coverage, was allowed to falsely smear Steven as a so-called white supremacist. He is Hispanic, for what it's worth. And I hope that when his criminal trial is over and when he wins that trial, that Lynn Wood or someone like him, Lynn Wood, of course, the lawyer for Nick Sandmann, who has achieved multiple huge settlements with the media, will be persuaded to get involved in Steven Baca's case, because of this clear defamation and libel by both the left and establishment right in his cases. So somebody says, why do you disagree with Fox News? Well, come on. Give me a why, everybody. If you agree with me, yes, that Fox News has gotten more and more liberal, more and more capitulationist over the years. I worked for Fox for 15, almost 20 years, almost from the founding of the company. I was personally reached out to by Roger Ailes to join that organization. And historically, of course, it's so very important. But when they choose people like Donna Brazil over conservatives, when they throw conservatives under the bus for telling the truth and blacklist so many of our heroes in the grassroots movement, yeah, I have a problem with Fox News. I'm very glad to be a part of the Newsmax family now. My Sovereign Nation program airs every Saturday now at 7 p.m., re-airs on Sundays at 11 a.m. I'd appreciate it if you all spread the word about that. And I'm using my show not to do the usual noise and manufactured outrage and shallow coverage that you get on so much of the rest of cable news, but actually to cover stories that nobody else will. And so for my very first show last week, I had Steven Baca on. I also had a brilliant political theorist, Darren Beatty, on to talk about the weakness of the left, of both the left and the right, the moral imperialism that now reigns, where Republicans simply play these stupid games of denying that they're racists or denying that they're sexists or denying that they're transphobic, homophobic, and thinking that they're going to win elections and win over the hearts and minds of people by showing how frickin' weak they are. Okay. And you're not going to get that anywhere else. Not as brazen and as honest and candid a critique of the right, which is needed, right? You're not going to get that on Fox News, with few exceptions, right? One of my longtime heroes, Lou Dobbs, who was one of the very first to go after the sellout H-1B program and the open borders incorporated forces in the Republican Party, and of course, the heroic Tucker Carlson. But other than those two, on a reliable basis, what you're mostly going to get is Marie Barf. Oh, I'm sorry, Marie Harf. And Donna Brazil and Juan Williams, right? It's a problem. And yes, Paul Hedges says Fox sees its biggest ratings. And that's largely because of Tucker Carlson. And yes, I've got a lot of old friends there that do great work, but people have to know that there are alternatives. There are alternatives. And I saw a lot of whys from people, yeses from people agreeing with me. Hannity is a crusader. Yes, Hannity is a longtime friend of mine. But what I want you to know is that there are a lot of people who no longer appear on Fox News because they are not controlled opposition. You have to take a deeper view of what you're actually seeing on these networks and why you see certain people and other people have been disappeared, right? Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. Tucker is pretty great. I absolutely agree with that. He is must-see TV, and his monologues, his segments are the most penetrating TV that you'll see. And that's why his ratings are through the roof. I agree with you, Wendy. Fox News fan says that Tucker Carlson is a fake populist. I absolutely do not agree with that. I think he's one of the most brilliant diagnostic commentators on key America First issues. And look, there's a lot of great guys at Fox. Absolutely. And I've known Laura Ingraham for 20 years. We've been fighting on the same side of so many of these issues. She has spoken truth to power and the Republican establishment for many, many years now, and helped lead the battle against the Bush amnesty. I wish more of these folks would concentrate on some of the mass migration issues that we face and be as laser focused on it as Lou Dobbs has over the years. So yes, a lot of great people, but at the same time, please be aware of the influence that the left-wing sons of Rupert Murdoch are having on the overall direction of the network. I do wish that Roger Ailes were still alive today to keep a tight rein and steer that ship and keep it in the right direction. And of course, we always must defend when these left-wing forces, many of them Soros subsidized, organize campaigns, witch hunts, advertising boycotts, when anybody tells the truth on any of these stations. And it's happened many times. I've seen it. I've called it out. And of course, I've followed the money to find the truth about many of those organizations. There's a huge intersection, of course, of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and Open Borders Incorporated. I hope many of you have at least taken a look at Open Borders Incorporated, which came out last fall, because there's an intersectionalism. All right, that's the left's term for when all of these disparate special interest groups on the left collaborate with each other. Sometimes it's direct, sometimes it's indirect, right? But they set aside their differences and unite to achieve their larger goals, whether it's anarchy, wreaking havoc in our economy, obstructing the Trump administration at every turn. And unfortunately, we don't have that same kind of unity on the right. And a lot of that is because of these Con Inc. forces that are out for themselves. They are not true believers in causes. That's why I'm spending all of this time with you on the Stand with Steven Baca campaign because nobody else would do it. I hope that you'll be tweeting about this to all of the leading influencers, all the blue check marks on the right. And I'd like to call out people like the NRA and Charlie Kirk and the Ben Shapiros and many of these supposedly pro Second Amendment organizations and individuals. Pick your favorite one. I've seen a lot of them, their names here in the comments. Tweet them about it. Ask why they're not covering it. Ask Tucker, ask Hannity, ask Bongino. Ask them all. You've seen the videos. I'm going to share the clips. I'm going to tag them all, and I hope you'll do the same. I am actually running out of voice here. So hold on a second. I still have almost 800 people with me. I'm going to go get a ukulele. Be right back. JD! Hey, JD! Hey, JD! No, he's not. Can I have a ukulele? Can I borrow your ukulele, please? Yeah. All right, guys. He didn't abandon me. Yay! Can you hear me? I'm still here. Yeah, like I said, I don't know. Some of you may have missed this, but I did March of Dimes telethons when I was in high school to raise money for March of Dimes. I played the piano, did big duets, and had musical concerts and all that to raise money for March of Dimes. And so, I feel like this is a telethon. I'm raising money. I should work for the donations. And David has been patiently waiting. I think he's still there. And I said that I would play the ukulele, play a couple chords for anyone who donates $100. Think Reason says, Michelle, 2 issues. Please be clear as to where and how we donate. Well, it's right here on the page, fundly.com/standwithstevenbaca. All you do is go to Fundly, and there's the donate now button right there. You can access my column that I've written on Steven, updates on his case there, as well as a summary and links to several of the fundamental videos that will show you what exactly happened in his case. And if you're just joining or if you came in late, we spent the first hour with Steven and his lawyer talking about the results of the preliminary hearing. Things went really well for Steven in that case. The judge explicitly cast doubt on the credibility of the prosecutor's witnesses. And also I've obtained a police report involving the man who was shot, a man named Scott Williams, who's also obviously a witness in the case. And he has a criminal record himself, which is I think important for you to know. And as I mentioned, a couple of the reasons why I am sponsoring and crusading on Steven's behalf, a couple of those reasons are key. One is a Soros subsidized district attorney that is prosecuting him, a district attorney who received $100,000 from George Soros's Political Action Committee in order to get him elected. And there are also GoFundMes for the women who assaulted Steven and assaulted at least one other man, a New Mexico Civil Guard member, as well as Esther Rivera, the older woman who had come to pray at the Oñate statue that was torn down by these thugs. So, fundly.com, stand with Steven Baca. Wait, where is my ukulele, for goodness sakes? Huh? No, give it to me. It's okay. Thank you. Is it in tune? All right. All right. And just so you know, that man, Scott Williams, I believe, is the one who bashed Steven over the head with the skateboard. And as he was being chased down by this mob, he had been backing away from these thugs. They instigated violence against him by falsely accusing him of being a police officer, which stirred up things, basically pouring fuel on the fire among these anti-cop rioters. And you know, it's just, you know, the way the whole thing snapped as Steven described it to me. I mean, it just had this feeling of Lord of the Flies to it. Okay, so keep donating. David, hope you've waited patiently. Ta-da! How'd I do? It really is me. Now, those are the 4 chords I know. It's somebody tell me it's F, G, A minor, C, something like this. There's only 4, I know. Now, apparently, I used to be able to play the Schoolhouse Rock preamble to the Constitution. Let's see. And also Forever Young. It's the same 4 chords. Ta-da! I'm not going to sing for you because I will scare away the nearly 800 people who have hung with me. I would try to persuade my son to do it, but, you know, got to protect the kids. Anyway, oh, thanks. I'm so glad you all liked it. I cannot play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That was going to be one of my COVID era goals, you know, when we were in full lockdown. But I will absolutely work on that. I'm seeing so many comments here from people who know about the case, and I really, really appreciate it. The reason we're here is for Steven Baca. And it's important that you know that he had been assaulted by all of those members of the mob. You saw Megaphone Girl, Camo Girl, and these are perpetrators of a false narrative that somehow he was the one attacking these women when you saw them with your own eyes. If you have been hanging with me, sucker punching the one New Mexico Civil Guard member, just going in there and pummeling people who were there peacefully trying to protect the statue that was torn down while the Albuquerque Police Department watched. I also have an exclusive interview with the police union president in Albuquerque, who had some very interesting things to say, sharing his frustrations with the city leadership and talking about this environment that's been created when you order rank and file officers to essentially stand down. Look, you can call it technically or formally a stand down order or retreat order, whether it's de facto or de jure, right? Whether in fact it was ordered or whether it just happened that way, right? The effect is the same. It's going to lead to violence against innocent people. And you have to understand who the violent perpetrators were in this case and who were the innocent victims. Steven was the innocent victim. All right, I'm going to put this up here one more time. Going to check and see how we're doing, and then I'm going to close things out in just a couple of minutes. Awesome. We are now nearing nearly $52,000. We have 1,116 donors. That is incredible. I appreciate every single one of you who's hung on with us. This is remarkable. I mean, I've been broadcasting for more than 2 hours now, starting to lose my voice. And I hope that this does set a precedent, that we can get together and do something like this, and that we can do it without drudge links. We can do it without, major primetime TV shows. And you see that with other crowdfunding campaigns, that when things catch fire, that it can make a huge, huge difference. I hope you'll share this broadcast with other people. I hope you'll share the video clips that I put together that I'm going to post on YouTube. Hopefully they'll stay up, although you never know with the censorship that we're facing now, when the plug might be pulled, whatever arbitrary reason it might be pulled. It is a threat to tell the truth. It is a threat to disrupt business as usual. And that's what's going on here. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop. I appreciate all of you. I'm going to sign off now, and I will keep you updated on the case. Fundly.com/standwithsteven Baca. I hope you'll join me. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.